यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना यमुनातीरावनचारी यमुनातीरावनचारी जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा श्रीला प्रभुपादा प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद्भागवतम की जय। समवेत भक्तवृंद की जय। जय निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि 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 बोल। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितां येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। तप्तकाञ्चन गौरांगी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषाभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। नमो ब्रह्मण्यदेवाय गोब्राह्मणहिताय च जगद्हिताय कृष्णाय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Narayanam namaskritya narang chaiva narottamam deving saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati nishtiki. Welcome to Bhagavad Gita class. Today we are reading from the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, text number 5, and this chapter is entitled The Universal Form. The text goes as follows. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Pashyame Partha Rupani Pashyame Partha Rupani Shatashotha Sahasrashah Satasotha Sahasrashah Nana Vidhani Divyani Nana Vidhani Divyani Nana Varna Kritini Cha Nana Varna Kritini Cha Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Pashyame Partha Rupani Shatashotha Sahasrashah Nana Vidhani Divyani Nana Varna Kritini Cha. Please chant.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha, Shri Bhagavan Vacha, Asyami Partha Rupani, Asyami Partha Rupani, Shata Shota Sahasrashaha, Shata Shota Sahasrashaha, Nana Vidhani Divyani,
Nana Vidhani Divyani, Nana Varna Kritini Cha.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha,
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Asyami Partha Rupani,
Pashyame Partha Rupani Sahasrashah Navidhani Divyani Nana Varna Kritini Cha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Pashyame Partha Rupani Satashosta Sahasrashah Nana Vidhani Divyani Nana Varta Vanakritini Cha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Pasha, just see, me, my, Partha, O son of Pritha, Rupani, forms, Shatashaha, hundreds, Atha, also, Sahasrashaha, thousands, Nana Vidhani, variegated, Divyani, divine, Nana, variegated, Varna, colors, Akritini, forms, Cha, also. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Arjun, O son of Pritha, now see my opulences, hundreds of thousands of varied, divine and multicolored forms. Purport. Arjun wanted to see Krishna in his universal form, which, although a transcendental form, is just manifested for the cosmic manifestation and is therefore subject to the temporary time of this material nature. As the material nature is manifested and non-manifested, similarly, this universal form of Lord Krishna is manifested and non-manifested. It is not eternally situated in the spiritual sky like Krishna's other forms. As far as the devotee is concerned, he is not eager to see the universal form. But because Arjuna wanted to see Krishna in this way, Krishna reveals this form. This universal form is not possible to see, not to be seen by any ordinary man. Krishna must give one the power to see it. Mukam karoti vachalang pangum langhayate girim yatkripatamaham vande Shri Gurundinatarinam. So, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Pashyame Partha Rupani Shatashotha Sahasrashaha Nana Vidhani Divyani Nana Varna Kritini Cha. So, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Arjun, O son of Pritha, just see my opulences. Now, my opulence, hundreds and thousands of varied, divine, and multicolored forms. So, Arjun wants to understand Krishna's universal form. What is this universal form? It is how the entire universe is integrated, how every atom is connected, how, like the quantum physicists say, how everything is entangled, how rivers, oceans are connected, how the macrocosm is connected to the microcosm. Your body is also a universal form, and Krishna's whole universe is a universal form. All these links are there. But today I'm not going to discuss that because it's very interesting. A lot of details and a lot of sciences which come out of this, like Jyotish, Ayurveda, other kinds of sciences, psychology, they all come out of proper understanding of the universal form. But at the moment, it's more important to understand what actually the universal form is regarding levels of consciousness. Basically, there are 4 levels of consciousness, as I mentioned in previous classes, and that is Jagran, Swapna, Shushupti, and Turiya, which means wakeness, there is dreaming, there is deep sleep without dreams, and there is the transcendental consciousness, right? So, based on what I previously said, I will go now into more detailed understanding of that. There is a verse in the 12th canto, 11th chapter, text number 22, which goes as follows. Sa vishvas taijasah pragyas turya iti vrittibhihi athendriyashaya jnanair bhagavan paribhavyate. One can conceive of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in terms of awakened consciousness, sleep, and deep sleep, which function respectively through external objects, mind, and covered consciousness, and also in terms of the 4th transcendental level of consciousness, which is characterized by pure knowledge. I have replaced impure intelligence or impure mind with covered consciousness because that is coming in the word to word and it is more clear in expressing this. So, once more, one can conceive, which means understand, experience, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in terms of awakened consciousness, sleep, which means with dreaming, and deep sleep, without dreaming, which function respectively through external objects of this world, mind, which is generally not visible, and covered consciousness, which is there in deep sleep. And also in terms of the 4th transcendental level of consciousness, which is characterized by pure knowledge. Now, for the conditioned soul, the Baddha Jiva, which goes to sleep every night, then these stages of consciousness are experienced as the first one is Jagran, wakefulness. When you're awake, you're conscious of the external objects and your external body, your gross body. And in this state of consciousness, the other states of consciousness of dream and deep sleep are pushed in the back as subconsciousness, right? Because you're focusing on the external objects, your external body. But it doesn't mean that the other consciousness are not existing anymore or they are disappeared. They are still there, but you're not using them. And they are pushed at the back as subconsciousness. But when the conditioned soul is a dreaming state and dreaming state of consciousness, then this jagran, this awake state of consciousness, is actually turned off. And while you're dreaming, you're not conscious of this world. You don't even know whether it's raining or not. And if you have a very good sleep and dreaming, then you don't even notice the thunderclap or that the earth is shaking. You're like sleeping like a Kumbhakarna, not aware of anything. Then how will you awaken? How did they awaken Kumbhakarna? You know who's Kumbhakarna? Kumbhakarna is the brother of Ravana. And these 3 brothers, Ravana, Kumbhakarna, Vibhishan, and they were performing austerities in order to get benedictions from Lord Brahma. So when Lord Brahma came, then all three wanted to be living eternally, wanted to have eternal life, but they know Brahma would not give them. So Ravana, he got the benediction not to be able to be defeated by anybody except for, he was too proud to ask for men and monkeys. So that was not included in the boon. No devatas, no demigods, no demons could defeat him, no weapons and things like that. But he was too proud, thinking, what are these humans? They're just crawling like snakes on the earth. They are useless. They have no powers. So it is an insult to me to use Brahma to ask a benediction to be immune to death by human hands. And these monkeys, they are our food, the daily food. Why should we bother even asking boon for that? So proud. So he got his boon. And then Vibhishan asked his boon, and he was so pleased, Brahma, with him, that, okay, you can get eternal life, Vibhishan. And then Kumbhakarna's turn came. And the Devatas became very worried that this Kumbhakarna, he was a giant, very huge, big Rakshasa, that he would ask for the throne of Indra, the Indra Asana. So the Devatas, they asked Mother Saraswati, you please stun his tongue and bewilder him so that instead of Indra Asana, he says Nindra Asana. And Nindra Asana means a bed, a huge bed to sleep. So when his time came, then Mother Saraswati sat on his tongue and made Kumbhakarna say, my dear Father Brahma, please give me a Nindra Asana. And Brahma said, Tathastu, you'll be sleeping for the rest of your life. And no, Brahma, please, please. He was bewildered. And Ravana objected, my dear Brahma, how can you be so? You give him a boon, but then if he cannot remain awake, how will he enjoy this material world? Then Brahma said, okay, then he will be sleeping for 6 months and wake up for 1 day, and then again he will fall asleep. This boon I can give because I'm touched by your brotherly affection. So that's a benediction Kumbhakarna got. So immediately he felt tired. And there was a palace made for him and a big bedroom with a huge bed, and Kumbhakarna was sleeping. And there's no way to wake him up for 6 months. And then after 6 months, he would wake up and then eat a lot, and then he would fall asleep again. Even without boons, he was so powerful he could conquer the Devatas. So what to speak if he would get a boon? So they were very worried. So then what happened? When the Ramachandra was attacking with the monkey army, then Ramana was very much worried he would lose the battle. And then his uncle on mother's side, he told him, why are you worrying? Why are you bringing Rakshasas from the lower planetary systems when you have the king of Rakshasas right there in your palace sleeping? Wake him up. He is alone enough for Ramachandra's army of monkeys. And Ravana was like, how amazing, I never thought of this. He was very happy, and he sent the army general, wake him up and tell him to come to the palace. So they all went, and then how to wake up this giant? It was not even 6 months, so he was not supposed to awaken. So they wanted to force him to awaken. So they brought spears and pricking in his feet, and elephants trumpeting, and music and drums. Kumbhakarna, he remained. What to do? Then they brought all kinds of other noisy things, bells and these gongs. Kumbhakarna didn't awaken. Bring water and throw it over his body, cold water. Kumbhakarna did not awaken. Then he said, oh, I'm so tired, I'm even hungry. Hungry? Hey, arrange for a nice meal for Maharaja Kumbhakarna. And they arranged huge amounts of jalebis and foods and idlis and dosas, is South India, right? And all kinds of meat, because Rakshasas, they eat meat. And yes, as the smell came into his nose, Kumbhakarna awoke. That's how you awaken a Kumbhakarna who's sleeping, right? So I hope you don't have that kind of a sleep, but when a conditioned soul is in a dreaming state of consciousness, then the awakeness state, jagrana, is actually turned off. You're not conscious of the external objects, not of your gross body. You are in a state of dream consciousness. That second state of consciousness, swapna, is most prominent. and which was in the wake state, you are actually considering that as subconsciousness, which you used to fulfill your plans, your desires in the world of external objects. And generally, conditioned souls, they want to materialize their plans, fulfill their plans in the external world of this, of the external consciousness. You want to build a house made of bricks with the roof on top of it, and there should be a heating pump to keep it warm. So these are all external objects, and we consider that to be real. And the other things, dreams, they are not so real. Right? But why do we think like that? Somebody told us to think like that. Why? Because we are awake for 16 hours, you're sleeping for 8 hours. Or what if it would be the way around? Right? You'd be sleeping for 16 hours, or maybe 6 months, and waking up for 1 day, like Kumbhakarna. What would you consider to be reality then? The dreaming state or the awakeness state?
Dreaming.
Still, we take dreaming state as a...
I would be shocked to be awake for 1 day and then
You go back to your normal state. So what is reality? Guess what? You can also communicate with each other in dreaming state. You know that? There are ways. It sounds to be very mystical, but it is possible. So we have been trained in school that awakeness state is real, because there you can work and pay tax to the government, right? That's reality. And all the other things, oh, they are, we cannot tax your dreams, so they're not real. That's basically how materialists think. That's the bottom line. Money. Money decides what is real, what's not real. But in order to fulfill your plans in this material world, you need that state of consciousness in which there are so many dreams. Dream house, your dream wife, your dream children, your dream career, your dream bank balance, everything which you are dreaming of and you're trying to make real in this material world. So when you're in Jagrana state, waked state, you only use that thinking, feeling, and willing part of your dreaming state of consciousness to realize your dreams in this state of awakeness state. But the swapna state of consciousness doesn't have only thinking, feeling, and willing in there. There's much more in the state of consciousness, which you're not using. And therefore science is always trying to find, humans are only using 10% of their brain. What do the other 90% contain of? I can tell you, one part of your brain, in the stem, there are memories of all your past lives. Amazing. The subconscious swapna is not just dreaming. There are many other lives contained within your memory database. And sometimes in dreams, they pop up naturally. All of a sudden, you see yourself flying in the sky. And you have visions of, you are on a planet and there are 2 moons rising. And then a red planet is coming. Whatever you have, all kinds of dreams you can have. Nothing can be concocted which has not been experienced in some other life, according to Narada Muni. That means, of the many storehouse of memories you have, these memories, they pop up and they are also from other lifetimes. So there is a very interesting scope of researching there. But we only use thinking, feeling, and willing of that state of consciousness to maneuver ourselves in this world of awakeness state, of Jagrana. So when you, the conditioned soul, goes into deep sleep, right, beyond swapna, when you go in a deep sleep of state of consciousness, also there are no dreams anymore. So in swapna, you actually have lost your gross body awareness. In other sense, the gross body doesn't exist or exists, it doesn't matter to you, right? No body. And still you're alive in your subtle body. Now in deep sleep, then also the subtle body disappears, it's shut off. And when in the morning, you only can say, I had a very good night's rest, I didn't have any dreams, and so intensely I was to peaceful rest. Yeah, it is. You don't see anything in deep sleep. Mostly you see black or darkness. But there is a real experience of peace, intense peace and calmness and rest. Vedanta Sutra mentions that to be created by Mahavishnu. The jiva goes through the nadis onto the lap of Mahavishnu and takes rest there. And he recharges the Atman so that he can, when he wakes up in Jagran again, he can face a new day. That energy is necessary. So, in deep sleep, when there is no mind, what remains, there is only the Atman. So, every night, Lord Krishna, in his different forms, is teaching us that you can also live without a mind and without a body. You can live just with the Atman. Now, when you are on that level, you're actually diving into your subconscious. The first subconsciousness is the swapna, dreaming, and the second subconsciousness is deep sleep, where there is only Atma, not even the mind is there. So mind means also thinking, feeling, willing, ego. These are also not there. You are on the level of Atman. And there is, except for Lord Vishnu, there's nobody around. You're not aware of anything. You can't see anything, you can't smell anything, you can't plan anything, not taste anything, because all these sensual sensations of consciousness are shut off, because they are all in the swapna state, in the mind state. All these senses, they are not in the deeply in the Atman, they are not there. So, in one sense, then the mental and the physical experiences are turned off, and one experience intense peace, rest, and calmness in the lap of Mahavishnu. And in that deep sleep state, then one can experience the original cause of one's existence, just the Atman, without any covering of subtle body and gross body. Every night we are experiencing this. Everyone had this experience. I guess you all had this experience, right? But you're not aware of it. That's the problem. I'm making you aware of it. What can you do with this? Yogis, they analyze this. And that state of deep sleep, where the Jiva Atma goes to Mahavishnu, is called the Karana Sharira, or the causal body. You have the gross body, the subtle body, then you have also the causal body, and then you have the Atma. So what is this causal body? It is like if you have studied Bhagavatam, there is something called the Karana Sagar, the causal ocean, where Mahavishnu is lying. And he's in a state of Yoga Nidra. Himself in a state of subconsciousness. He's not awake, neither is he sleeping. And they say that he is actually meditating in a deep state on Krishna's pastimes. But there is also an awareness of this material world, because the material world comes out in seeds forms from his pores and from his breathing. So it is seed of consciousness, that is a state of your seed consciousness. So mind and body are present in that state, but only in seed. They are not active. So they are turned off. And since the causal ocean in which Mahavishnu is lying is the original gateway through which we entered into this material universe and became conditioned and bound and compacted and shrunken in our consciousness. That happened to our state of consciousness. From transcendental ecstasy of Vaikuntha or Goloka, we became very much seed-like consciousness, pea-like, or like we like to say in the Western world, like horse have covered their eyes. These horses have these little things that they don't shock and conceal left and right. So we have become like that, very much shrunken in our consciousness. And that means conditioned or bound or become a conditioned soul, conditioned by the laws of material nature. That's considered to be a fall down from our higher levels of consciousness into lower level of consciousness. But if we would be able to go to that level of consciousness of deep sleep with our eyes open, so to say, in a state of meditation instead of in a state of sleep, then we can ask any question there, because it's the causal state, the cause of all the problems will be revealed to you. Why you came, your life's lessons, the direction for your life, all can be revealed. And because there is no awareness of, or no disturbance of body and mind, that state is considered to be samadhi. Samadhi stasya keshava. And in our chanting of Hare Krishna, we're supposed to chant on that level and let the mantra awaken our original state. And when you understand your original state, you also understand how you fell from the spiritual world, because that is part of your sambandha jnana. You have sambandha, you have abhideya, and you have prayojana. your knowledge of your relationship with Krishna, acting upon that relationship is called abhidheya, and the ultimate goal of your practices acting upon your relationship is to awaken the real state of Krishna prema, prema prayojana. So part of that sambandhi gyan is also how you felt, what you did wrong in that state of consciousness. So then all these questions disappear. There's no need to fight anymore, no need for writing big books and trying to defeat each other about the original fall of the jiva. It is a point of realization because it's part of your relationship. So it's a very personal thing, like that. So now, if you look how it works, when Lord Brahma took birth on the lotus, he was ignorant of his origin. And he went to do scientific research, right? He could only see, he was looking in the universe, and it says he was born with one head, but as he looked left and right, two more heads manifested. And also one head manifested in the back, so he got 4 heads. Some Tamasic Puranas describe that he had a 5th head, which later was chopped off by Lord Shiva, whatever it might be. Or Brahma has 4 heads at the moment, so to say. I didn't realize that this low. So, Brahma went the scientific way of research and understanding his origin, and he climbed down the lotus. You can see a little Brahma is born and he's climbing down the lotus trying to find his origin. Because he said that whatever it might be, I'm born, but what is my cause? I can only see water in every direction. I'm sitting on a lotus and there is a stem which goes into the water. My cause must be somewhere in this water, right? Logical. Scientific research. You can't say it's very unscientific. No, it's very scientific. He went down, and we all have these tendencies because Brahma had this tendency. So he was looking and going to the stem, the origin of the lotus, and he found a lake from where the lotus had sprouted. But more than darkness and deep water, he couldn't find. He was actually swimming there and diving and swimming and diving, but he couldn't find the origin. So when he gave up his scientific research, then he climbed again that stem and went back and sat on the lotus. And then he heard a voice speaking 2 letters of the Sanskrit alphabet, ta, pa, which means austerities, penances. So Brahma couldn't see anything, and he understood that his scientific research had failed to find the origin. He might have written a thesis that, my origin is a dark lake and a lotus stem, right? That was his conclusion. And he might have maybe have to defeat his thesis among scientists in order to get his doctorate. But Brahma was not interested in that, in doctorates, and he was interested in the truth, right? And he then climbed that stem and sat down on the lotus, and he started performing austerities, tapasya. And when he started performing his tapasyas, then he understood that he's now reaching deeper levels of consciousness. Because his real origin was not in his physical origin. He understood something. That my origin doesn't lie in matter. There is something else which is my origin. So, your origin is not your mother's womb. It is something else. And Brahma is trying to realize what that is. He was born from a lotus. But is the lotus his origin? He could say like that. He could defend his paper and get his doctorate. I'm the lotus-born Brahma. But that was not the reality. He had to do tapasya. And Brahma then controlled his senses and mind. And in yoga, these states of controlling the senses and mind are called pratyahara and dharana. Pratyahara. Ahara means to eat. And pratyahara means to give up eating. How do you eat? By your senses. So you stop gratifying your senses by looking here and there and look inside. And keep the mind in that state. And in this way, he entered the swapna state, the state of dream. Right? Not by falling asleep. No. By meditation. Back straight, breathing exercises to keep the mind fixed. And he entered the dream state, dream dimension, in a conscious way. And because of his mental concentration, great power manifested in his mind. So much that through his mind, he was making the prototypes of living entities who are conditioned in the 3 modes of natures, like ghosts and goblins, snakes and reptiles and scorpions, they were all created by the mind of Brahma. Because all these living entities were there in his bodies and they had these desires to manifest. So the creation starts with a subtle manifestation, and then a gross manifestation comes, right? First there are dreams, you make a prototype in your thoughts, and then you follow that. Then you are inspired to do in certain ways. So Brahma also, he started thinking of certain mentalities, and then this manifests as the original blueprints for all these species in the modes of nature. But Brahma was not satisfied with that. He was dissatisfied with his creation, and he went into purification. He started doing meditation on Lord Vishnu to purify himself, and then he went into deeper levels of consciousness. Now, after 100 years of his meditation, when it became complete, then he could see how Paramatma was situated in his heart. And there's a reference here in the Srimad Bhagavatam saying, goes as follows: at the end of Brahma's 100 years, when his meditation was complete, he developed the required knowledge, and as a result, he could see in his heart the Supreme within himself, whom he could not see before with the greatest endeavor. So we see how much he endeavored. He went down to the lotus, he was swimming and trying to find origin. He couldn't see. But now, after 100 years of meditation, his consciousness was so much expanded that he could see there is Paramatma within me, who's giving me, guiding me with knowledge and understanding. But Brahma did not give up his meditation. Even after creations, he goes back into meditation. And then he creates again and he goes back into meditation. And in this way, Lord Brahma underwent penances for 1,000 years by the calculation of the demigods. He heard this transcendental vibration from the sky and accepted it as divine. This is what Srimad Bhagavatam says. Thus he controlled his mind and senses, and the penances executed were a great lesson for the living entities. Thus he is known as the greatest of all ascetics. So he's setting the example for those who are following Brahma, like we are, followers in the Brahma Sampradaya, that you want to know the truth, then you have to do some austerity. Now, you cannot do 1,000 years because you don't even live for 1,000 years. But you can do Ekadashis, you can do Janamashtamis, you can fast, you can chant in a concentrated way, and these are our tapasyas in Kali Yuga. And then, when, when 1,000 years passed, then he had darshan of Vaikuntanath, of Vaikuntha and Goloka planet. So, after 100 years of Brahma, he entered the Susupti dimension of consciousness, which is deeper than Swapna, and he entered there consciously, and therefore he could see Paramatma. And with that, he got pragya. Pragya, that is the state of deep sleep. When you go there in concentration and samadhi, then you get complete knowledge, like prakrishta rupena, prakriti, pranipata, pragya, complete knowledge. In that state, there is nothing unknown. We are reading this morning in Srimad Bhagavatam class about the qualification of a guru, what happens when you see Krishna, either eye to eye or in meditation. This is from the 8th canto, 6th chapter, verse number 9. Very interesting. I wrote a whole course on it, how to find a proper guru, based on that verse, which Srila Prabhupada explains. But then, after 100 years, he attained Paramatma's understanding. But after 1,000 years, he actually entered the Turiya level of consciousness, the fourth state, in which then it became manifest to him what Vaikuntha is, because that's on the fourth level. And also, the Goloka planets became manifest. And then also he started to see his relationship or his Swarup, his spiritual identity, which he had. And in this way he got Vaikuntha Darshan. Now, when one reaches those states of consciousness, Shri Dayal Nitai Vijay Gauranga Ki Jai, when one reaches those states of levels of consciousness, then when one looks in the outside world, the awakeness state, being situated in that level of consciousness, then you don't see the same thing as you're seeing now, right? You won't see wood. You will see wood also, but not in the same way, right? That's the thing. When that level of consciousness is opened by your meditation, by your chanting, then you can see that Paramatma has entered every atom and in everyone's heart. And that how Paramatma is acting as Upadrishta and Anumanta, as the witness and as the permitter. that he's responsible for all these shapes and forms. You can see how Paramatma is giving you remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. And Arjuna is asking here to Krishna, please show me how you have entered. So he's asking Krishna to show him without having actually done that necessary tapasya. How is that? Krishna mentions, Bhakto sime sakha cheti rahasyam hi tadattamam. Because you're a devotee, devoted to me, I can give you that knowledge. And we will see here that Krishna will tell Arjun, you can't see with these eyes you have right now. I will give you divya chakshu dadami teyam. I will give you divine eyes. Then you can see how I've entered every atom of this world and I'm creating all these superlative qualities. Among the animals, I am the lion. Among that which is immovable, I am the Himalayas. Among mountains, I am Meru mountain. So he's a superlative, the superlative qualities, how he is in the material world. And simultaneously, you can also then understand that the universe has actually a form. At the moment, we can't see the form of the universe. During the day, you only see blue, and during the night, you only see dark with stars in there. You always wonder, what are these stars? How far are they? Do other people live there? Right? So, when you gain that state of consciousness, you can also understand how it is Lord Vishnu or Krishna who has the entire universe in his own form. And then you find in the Bhagavatam, minimal 5 times, the universal form is described. Right? You don't find the 10th canto pastime 5 times being described. So this universal form is very much stressed. Now Prabhupada says devotees are not interested in seeing that because it's not their lovable object of devotion. But if you want to understand how material nature works and how Krishna is present in everything, then the Bhagavatam gives 5 chapters about, like the Purusha Sukta confirmed, and other chapters which describe this universal form. So it's 7:15. I'll end here. Any questions or comments?
Thank you for class, Prabhu. I was thinking about how you explained that we're leaving the body during deep sleep and going to the lap of Mahavishnu. And all these movements, no? What are happening. I was thinking, these days I read about therapy, treatment for veterans. You know, they all have PTSD and go crazy.
What are veterans?
Veterans are war veterans.
Yeah, war heroes or war people who are mentally injured.
Yeah.
Rambos.
I don't know Rambos. I don't think so.
When I was in high school, we saw this movie, Rambo.
Yeah. But the
No,
reality
okay.
is, they are trained for the government, so to say.
Okay.
So they all want to go to war, they're warriors, and then they come back and they have PTSD. No?
Which means?
Post-traumatic stress syndrome. No?
Okay.
They fight there, they're in a total stress situation, and they feel pumped. No?
By the way, you're a psychologist?
No, but interested.
Okay. I notice these classes are always interesting to people who are interested in psychology, deeper understanding of the workings of the mind, because psychology doesn't have this insight, which yogis have. You know?
So then they come back and they have, I read these days about treatment for these veterans. This is a guided treatment, really in very special clinics. USA started with this, and they, for a weekend or even longer, and they get some, I don't know what, some kind of herbs, you know, they just eat these herbs, and then they see, you know, their whole traumata from all kinds of perspective. What is the connection with their, you know, why they became interested in fighting, in being a warrior, and then their personality is revealed. So they have some bird view, so to say, and the very deep view simultaneously. And I was thinking, you know, this is herbs. So herbs have a chemical thing going on, no? Which reveals things to them. And then on the other hand, we have what you were nicely explaining, Upadrishta. This can only be revealed by the super soul. No? So I was thinking, how is this chemical reaction connected to the super soul? Like this?
Okay, very interesting question. One thing I can say, the drug effects, they're always coming from the Jagran level. And they also leave behind a kind of, how you say that, a kind of injury on these subtle levels. It's like, I recall one sannyasi explaining this, is that when you take drugs, this is your gross body, this is your subtle body. Generally, they're like that, functioning, like one unit, one entity. If you take drugs, then this starts to happen. See? This starts to happen. You see something, and the body is not able to control that. Also in yoga, it says that the difference between a madman and a rishi is that he can, on his own power, on his desire, he can open his chakra, third eye, and see in that dimension and then close it. But a madman, his chakras are damaged. And even if it goes open, uncontrolled, and he can't close it anymore. It's like a window. When you open it, you can't close it anymore. Anything can fly in and create some damage. These kind of things are there. Now, it might be that the government has found some kind of herb which makes, just like your muscles, very loose, and there's this Narayana tail which they use in Ayurveda. I had this pain in this muscle here, so I applied it everywhere, and I couldn't lift my toes anymore, because to lift your toes you need these muscles. So just completely slackened. So there is a possibility to slacken the Jagran world, to make you unaware, so you go in another state of consciousness. Now, it is not Paramatma guided, and you will see that it can even create side effects and even harms. I'm aware of this. When I was preaching in South America, there was a soldier who had all these traumas, because when there is ultimately a war, it is either you or me. You have to kill your opponent, otherwise he'll kill you, right? And then you see so many things happening, you're chopping heads or blood coming out, he's crying for his mother while he's dying. So all kinds of things, traumas are there. And in one way, it is their karma to be like that. And yes, in Ayurvedic treatment, there are also psychomatic traumas. But as I said, in order to see those things, you have to go in a deep state of calmness. And these people don't do that. So it's in the power of drugs. You have similarly, like the Shaivites, they use all kinds of drugs to see all kinds of revelations, but they are uncontrolled, and often they are not synchronized with their life's lessons. So in my opinion, yes, they might know why it happened, their personality, but they won't give them self-realization. You see, these people are not self-realized. If they are self-realized, then why are they not connecting to Krishna, which is the ultimate goal of their self-realization? So it's a temporary treatment, similarly like near-death experiences. When somebody is in a coma, or somebody's in an operation table, and they're put under anesthetics, then they're not aware of their gross body. And some people, they exit their gross body, have out-of-body travels, and they see a tunnel of light, and they go into the tunnel, and they meet their loved ones, those who are dead. They can speak to them again, they get messages, and they come back, and then they are, oh, I have seen the light, I have seen God. There are these documentaries of people documenting real events. One lady, she had this brain tumor or something, and had to be cut out, so the doctor had to put her into anesthesia. And under anesthesia, she could see her body, and it didn't look very nice. This operation cut off, open her head and things like that. But just floating into the light, and she went there. And she went into this world, and she met her uncle and things like that. And then she was asking, is God the light? Then the being said, no, God is not the light. The light is when God breathes. So then she thought, I'm standing in the breath of God. Things like that. In other cultures, they have other experiences of these kind of things. But when she had to come back into her body, which she didn't want to, then she could later relate all these things which happened. But the goal for yogis is to come onto a focused, on a fixed level of self-realization. Once you reach there in a healthy way, which is the yoga way, the bhakti yoga way, there is no more way to close that and fall back into a conditioned state, which means shrinking of consciousness. What we want is to always remain in that super consciousness, that you are unaware of the Jagran and of Swapna and of Sushupti. And other yoga schools call that super consciousness. We call that Krishna consciousness because there is nothing more superior than Krishna, right? So they don't have any manifestation of samandha gyan, of the relationship with the absolute truth. They have some temporary traumatic treatment, and I'm aware when that soldier told me also that he followed that and he was very happy. His dreams were these traumas were not coming in his dreams anymore. After some times, it started to come again. It was a temporary thing, and ultimately it doesn't help. It's just like patching up, you know. You have a leakage or or a hole. You patch it up, and then it tears apart again, and you patch it up. But the actual way is to become self-realized. At least come to the level of pragya, which is the level of deep sleep. And you come to the level through meditation. Then you're able to control your senses and see, like it says in the second chapter of the Gita, Sita pragyasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava. What is the language of one who is merged, consciousness is merged in transcendence? What is his words? What does he talk? How does he walk? How does he? And Krishna gives a whole section of verses how that is. And there is no mentioning of using drugs and herbs for that purpose. This is a tamasic way. There are some cultures, African cultures, also some South American cultures, which use these kind of things to have deeper insights in this kind of thing. But you have to be aware, when you have these insights and you're not guided and not protected by a divine being like Lord Krishna, how do you know what you're seeing is real or might be a being who is pretending himself or herself to be something divine and which she's not? You know? It's called a Pret syndrome, which you find also in the scriptures, that the dead, they want to enter the world of the living, the Preta syndrome. And then they use those who are very curious about channeling, they use their bodies, and if the person allows him to be channeled, then the person can take possession of his body and fulfill his material desires. So then they can show you many things to allure you, but what is real? So therefore, these kind of subtle things should not be done haphazardly, or like what even they would say with these herbs and things like that. They should be done under guidance of Paramatma, under guidance of a guru who knows what is real, what is not real, a being who might be a Rakshasa pretending to be a saint coming to help you. Just like we have this Kalanemi who was appointed by Ravana to stop Hanuman from bringing that herb to revive Lakshman. So he took up a form of a great sage. He was chanting Ram, 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 but he was not a saint. He was a Rakshasa. So like that, these things have to be made sure, and therefore we always need a spiritual master who is able to guide us in these kind of things. That much I will say.
Thank you very much for this answer. I like the example. What's the difference between the crazy guy and let's say Avaduta, right?
No.
The one is crazy, is disconnected.
No. Avadhut is a term like Nityananda Thakur. Avadhut is a person who is able to see the fourth dimension, which means Goloka Dham and Vaikuntha, and he is so absorbed in that he's acting sometimes on that level while being in this body. Like an Avadhut is a person, you ask him, what is the time now? Then he'll tell you the time in Goloka, not in the time here. So you say, what Avadhuta? Hey, where are you? Yeah, like that. That's an Avadhuta. He's not a madman. He is.
No.
Right.
That was not my point. I was appreciating your differentiation between a madman who has this, just madness, whatever you give this example.
Yes.
And on the other hand, the Avadhuta. So I just wanted to confirm that your example was very fitting. Because both externally may act crazy. One is crazy and the other one is totally connected with the divine form.
Yes, Nityananda Thakur, though acting as an Avadhuta, not following any rules and regulations, was very much protective of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even when the brahmacharis complained about his behavior, Mahaprabhu said, you can advance by worshipping his kalpin, means his underwear. That is the greatness of Nityananda. You don't know who he is and why he's acting like that. So that is the thing, only those who are on the level can understand what their levels of consciousness are. But a madman, he's not self-realized. And yes, it's a fashion, it's not just, that thing, the hippies were experimenting like that. Nowadays, youth is experimenting with those things. Because the external world is very boring now. right? Therefore, they create this 3D virtual reality in which you want to enjoy the gross world in another way, you know. But understand, as much as you're exploiting the dream state of consciousness, not training it, but making it lazy with your mobiles and all kinds of gadgets and gizmos, the less power for meditation and also visualization you get. If you don't use the gifts Krishna gave you, then you will lose them. You don't use your arms for service, the muscles don't work properly anymore. You don't like to walk, always use bike, the legs don't work properly anymore. You don't move your body, you get too fat, you get all kinds of diseases, glucose and all kinds of things. You don't use your brains, the brains don't work anymore. Use them for calculation. So we are so much habituated, especially in the Western world, with comforts, that we want to have everything instant. We don't believe in the process of asceticism. Bit by bit, you advance further and further, and then you reach the perfection. So in that way, you know, the Western world is very much, I want to have it right now. I want it all, I want it now. Even the song is like that, you know, in the 60s. You know? So that's our mentality, but it doesn't work like that. Brahma meditated for 1,000 years. And not like, you know, Krishna, you know, I meditated 1 day already. Huh? Are you watching me? Huh? You know, he wasn't impatient either. So he's giving the example how things are done. And the other things, yeah, you know, they might have now found medicines to go so-called in the subtle world, but it's basically what they do is manipulating the brain nerves and creating illusions. Because if it is really the subtle world, there must be also visions of what we have in our scriptures. Apsaras, Devatas, Yamaraj, but they don't report these kind of things. Therefore, Prabhupada denies that they ever went to the moon, because the description of the moon, which they see, doesn't correspond with what we read in the scriptures, what the moon is like. So, in one lecture, then he says, if these people go illegally to the moon, just like people like to enter America illegally, then the government will either catch them, but these beings, they have a way to divert them. So they might be landing in the Arizona desert, thinking, oh, this planet is all desert. Or they might put, you know, a shield or another kind of maya over consciousness that it looks only like stone and dust is the moon, you know. But the moon is a heavenly planet. So they might go there maybe even physically, but they cannot enter that dimension of consciousness where you can communicate with the beings of the moon, like that. So yes, if that it is happening, you know, I don't deny it. You can use it. Just like in Holland, if you have a full insurance, an extended insurance for medical treatments, then a regression hypnosis is you know, they pay you for a session. Because if you go back in the past and you can find the origin of your mistake by which you became diseased, then, and it helps the healing, then it's okay. So there are methods, and if you can do it with a drug, yeah, can be, then you see your personality, what you did, all of that. But I would prefer the prescribed method, because you find always in science that after certain years they discovered, oh, it was harmful. It was harmful what we experimented with, but comes after 30 years that they, you know, what they were trying to do was actually more harmful. So coming from a genetic background, I know how dangerous it can be. Just like there is this Monsanto company, which was actually manipulating seeds. Monsanto is a sister organization of Berger, which is a German organization which manipulates seeds. And it was a very nasty way what you were doing. They were going to the government and making a law that people were not allowed anymore to exchange natural seeds, right? And they were producing seeds which would give a fruit, but no more seeds to replant. So all kinds of, you know, like, how would you call them? Infertile seeds. They would only grow into a fruit, and then you eat it and there's no more fruit. So you have to keep buying from them. That was their idea. Now, those who ate Monsanto seeds, infertility has increased a lot in the world. Because from genetics we know if you give every time a sign to your body of what you eat, then the body is triggered in this way, right? And if you are eating all the time beef, cows and bulls. Bulls have been injected with testosterone, male hormone, and cows have been injected with estrogen, which is a feminine hormone. Then male who ate feminine hormones, they start to behave like in a certain way, you know, they get forms like a woman. And women who eat beef from a bull, they start to look like a man, you know, and even sometimes grow a little mustache. And these things happen, and you go, what are we doing wrong here? It's obvious. Any student from genetics knows what happens. Because when Monsanto came with their seeds to Russia to do the same thing, the Russians are always suspicious of the Americans. So they said, no, we'll first try out your seeds, see what effect they have on the population. So they tried on mice, on rats. And guess what? After 3 generations of rats, there were these horrible, strange genetic defects visible in the bodies of these new rats. So then they banned all genetic manipulated seeds from America. But you know, the Western world doesn't care for that, and we will see what happens in the next generations, whether we are still humans or we are something else than a human, you know. Therefore, I'm saying that science, you have to always be careful, because they need somebody to experiment on, and they're shameless, so they experiment on their own populace. And the guy who's experimenting, he won't take that food, you know. I saw there's some farmers, because in my education we had farm education. He said, you know, the farmer said that these 2 cows are my cows. What do you mean the others are not your cows? Well, no, well, they get, you know, all kinds of hormones to produce more milk, but these don't get. And I take only the milk from these cows for my personal consumption. This is what's happening. The rascal is not concerned about all the millions of children who are drinking maybe cow's milk, which is not so good for them because there are so many hormones in them. And he knows about it. But he himself only drinks milk from those cows, which he does not inject with these horrible growing hormones. So these things are there, you know, science. So we should be careful. That's my message, basically. Otherwise, you know, these drug things, they come actually from India. Using ganja, marijuana is also there from ancient times. But you find that those who do it, they get tamasic revelations. They don't get sattvic revelations. Nobody saw, you know, Brahma when they used the drug. Never reported anybody, any Baba or any Westerner reported, I've seen Brahma with 4 heads after taking this drug. Named the drug to be Brahma Darshan drug or something like. No, they always see these kind of strange low creatures, right? Which madmen also see, that and become fearful and things like that. So I prefer this path which Krishna described. Anything else? No? Okay. Grantra Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Maybe they see snakes.